Welcome everyone to this day's edition of GLL Nations Royale. I'm Toby, joined by Saint, and we have got two great matchups coming your way today. The first one we will be taking a look at is going to be in the upper bracket, and the second one is going to be down in the lower bracket. There's still two matches to go for these teams up in the upper bracket. We got Russia and Turkey squaring off in one match, and we will be joining forces with Ukraine down here.
Yeah, it's getting to crunch time right now. Is the you're 2 games away from the final, basically, if you can win 2 in a row. But if you drop down into that lowest bracket, it becomes a bit of a grind, right? I mean, those lower bracket teams that are already in there still have 4 games to go. So there's an opportunity here for these teams, for Netherlands, Ukraine, to sort of cut out, all those games that they need to play if they drop down to the lowest bracket and find the fast track to the final.
Now, thinking of, just when you think PUBG and those 2 nations, Ukraine and Netherlands, who, immediately from the top of the head springs out as the stronger nation in terms of PUBG overall? Not necessarily this, just overall.
I think I have to go with Ukraine right now. I think historically Netherlands has some great players in Ibiza and so on, but Ukraine right now is at the top of PUBG with the Northern Lights team. I think 3 out of 4 of that team are Ukrainian, so they're really coming to their own as a region. But I think overall it's going to be pretty close because there's a lot of sort of semi-pro and amateur Dutch players that have been around for a long time and have been pretty successful.
Yeah, let's take a look at the brackets and see exactly how things are squaring up. Of course, the upper bracket here, as you can see, Russia and Turkey are going against one another simultaneously with the match that we have got going, and then the winner of these 2 separate matches will head on up against one another in the upper finals. Could you imagine Russia and Ukraine in the upper finals? That'd be the CIS brawl of a century right there. You can see how what they've been fighting their way through all along the left side, and the teams that have fallen has fallen to this we see right here, the lower bracket, where I guess this is the redemption chance. Norway has already beaten Czechia. They apparently started early today. They finished that fight in 2 minutes. That's rather impressive, not gonna lie. Executing a best of 5 in 2 minutes, that's rather impressive. Ukraine and Hungary taking off to the battlefield against one another. Kazakhstan and Estonia, and then Denmark and Finland up in the top of things. We will be seeing, as far as I know, the Norwegian team go up against either Germany or Hungary after the first match is over. So do make sure to stick around for that. There's going to be a lot of PUBG coming your way, and I'm assuming, depending on how many maps we go to, that it's going to be a 3-4-ish hour broadcast.
Yeah, I'm expecting both these games to be pretty close, right? We're getting to the point now where all these teams are stacked. I mean, we have those dark horses of like Estonia and Kazakhstan that have made it through this far, which is quite impressive. But if you go off the caliber of the teams that we see, like, you've basically got the whole of Scandinavia, which for a long time have been the kings of esports in general, not just PUBG.
Except Sweden.
Yeah. Well, Sweden does better in other esports than PUBG. But overall, the caliber of teams we have now is so strong. So I'm expecting all these games to be pretty close. I think we'll still see a few 3-0s, those teams that just counter the other team pretty well. But I expect overall we're going to see at least 4 maps in every game.
That's what I was thinking. Normally we talk about the David versus Goliath matchups. We're at the Goliath versus Goliath matchups now for pretty much for the rest of the tournament. And I'm thinking, it's the same with boxing, right? You have these boxers that can literally, all they can do is they will jump around for a long time. But if they get that one punch in, you're going down. No matter how strong you are, you will go down. It's literally one punch if the guy gets landed. And I feel like that's what a lot of these teams are. They're really good because a lot of the opponents they've been going up against maybe haven't been able to parry that one punch. But here, as we see some of these teams be, I still feel like some could be 3-0s, and it won't be 3-0s because the other team is bad. It's just if you get if the wave just cracks at the right time over the opponent, there's nothing you can do on the receiving end if the blow is good enough.
And I think at this point, a lot of the teams are very similar, like a mechanical level. Right? You've all got a similar level of aim across the team. And now it becomes which team is the better strategy, which team takes control of the circles better, which team rotates better, and which team finds the correct gunfight. So generally speaking, yes, you'll see, you might see 3 really close games in a best of 3, and it might be one of the closest games you'll ever see. And it could still be a best of, it could still only go to 3 maps. So exactly. I'm expecting they're all going to be incredible matches in their own right. But yeah, as you said, I could see this. I could see Ukraine winning all 3 maps with 4 alive. With 3 alive. Yeah. Super close games.
It's gonna be interesting. You can see down in the bottom below the veto, it's already been done. We're going to start on Miramar. Then over to Erangel, Sanok, Vikendi, and then Erangel again. No love for Vikendi this time around either. It feels bad, man. Because I honestly must say, some of the more entertaining Nations Royale matches we've had, at least in my opinion, has been on Vikendi.
I mean, that one we watched yesterday around Dynaland was a pretty great match to watch. We had that massive, I think it was 45 players or something fighting within about 100 meters of each other. It was pretty wild to watch. But I'm looking at that, and realistically, Miramar and Erangel play out very similarly, at least in Nations Royale, right? It's sort of like it's a macro style where your rotations and your positioning is what wins you the map. But then Sanok becomes that sort of reset, right, where you can slow down the momentum of the other team. So, let's say Ukraine or Netherlands wins the first two maps. Sanok is the point where you have to turn around if you lost the first two maps. But that's the point where the game style sort of changes on that map. It's much more focused on those gunfights because of how close everything is. So I'm expecting we might see one team take the first two maps, and then Sanok goes the other way.
Also, I feel like Sanok on Sanok you can stay hidden for longer. Like on Miramar, if you're trying to rotate 32 people somewhere, somebody from the other team will notice. Like you can't really do an ambush. You can't really sneak up on your opponent when it's 32v32. On Sanok, on the other hand, I feel like because of the foliage and how things work, you might not go completely unnoticed, but you can move around a little more undetected than you can on a map like Miramar. So expecting Miramar to be kind of those you're trying to force opponents into taking a fight in an area you want them to fight you in, and see who gets the upper hand in deciding that. Whereas on Sanok, it tends to get a little more chaotic.
Yeah, when you go back to yesterday with the Hungary versus Greece match we saw, where Hungary was pretty much able to sneak 25 players through the Greek front line when they were being held out of the circle, and they just found that one little pathway through the jungle that got them behind, and then they were able to spring an ambush on Greece and pretty much wipe out half the team. So it's really interesting to see teams sort of adapt their style to each map, but it looks like we're getting in.
Straight into match number one. As you can see, we are headed on over to Miramar, and this is going to be good. It's going to be fun. Let's see Ukraine. A lot of people's jumping out on early, and I gotta say, this might just be coincidence, but every single match we've covered so far, the blue team has had blue in their flag, and the red teams have had red in their flag. I don't know how it works, if it's just coincidence, but it's pretty impressive. Not gonna lie.
You'd assume maybe the hosts have been planning that intentionally, but I'm looking at that map. It's sort of we've obviously got that sort of south versus north split, right? But it's very intriguing to see that there's a bunch of Ukrainian players going for El Pozo, which I'm a little bit curious by, given that they know, or maybe they don't know that it's not their teammates around them. But it looks like we're going to have that early gunfight, which realistically you'd expect is going to go in the way of the Netherlands. Maybe I'm looking at the Dutch roster here, and a lot of the players are backing out as if they. I'm not going to say they're giving up on the players that they have in there, but it also seems like that is indeed, as you said, going to be the first. Oh my god, quote unquote Ukrainian circle. So the question now is, if you're the Ukrainian players up by El Pozo, do you try and get out of there, or do you just do as we see right now, toggle on and start fighting? I think where you are, and given the fact that there's so many Dutch players around you, you just want to go for a fight and just take out as many players. It's sort of a not necessarily a suicidal play, but you're like the berserkers that they've sent in to just do as much damage as they can before they go down. And there's enough Ukrainian players here that they can shut down the players in El Pozo and maybe take out the reinforcements as well. So I'm curious to see how it happens. If they can successfully take out, let's say, 8 Dutch players before they even get towards phase 1, then it's going to be a really, really strong early advantage for Ukraine, even if they lose the players that are here.
Art, all on his own, surrounded by opponents. He found the knock on Toggleton, but nothing more happening right now. He does have friends nearby, and it's really only Bab Salami. I love the names, by the way. Bab Salami is he's kind of isolated. So first one's going to fall. That's going to be a Dutch player.
Yeah, and if we speak about the circle for a second, like that, not only is it like in favor of the Ukrainians, right? I mean, it's gone towards where the Ukrainians have dropped, but also because you have that big sort of wall of Lost Leons, it becomes so difficult for the players not in the circle to come in, because you basically get funneled along the coast, right? That's that's a rough run, but Bob, it's insta headshots J-Fruit. What a shot.
Yeah. Nice little turnaround. Tries to go for it again. Not going to happen this time, J-Fruit. You might want to think twice about peeking into it. Oh, he does get the tag, but somehow he was get around the corner.
I was one bullet away from the kill as well. He just runs out at the worst time. So Bob's surviving for now. But I mean, look, he's got no support around him. Chico, it's only about 100 meters away. But I mean, realistically, they're not going to be able to win like 2v6. So you'd expect Bob is just going to keep running, get towards the rest of his team, get away, and regroup for another time. I mean, they should be able to loot on this west side. I doubt the Ukrainians are really going to push too hard. You'd expect they have vehicles on the eastern side. So I want them to push, but it's so risky to run through these buildings where you have absolutely no idea if there's a guy like prone around the corner, a guy set up in the rafters. It's a risky play if you do want to make that push.
I mean, that alongside with the fact that literally the entire team is in the circle.
Yeah.
Just fall back, go down there. You look at where they are. They know too that there are no opponents. I mean, there's no way that opponents are inside this circle right now. With how they're split, they have full control. They just need to put someone over by the church, and they'll be able to tell that there's literally not a single player in their warehouse.
Yeah, and they can just set up that defensive wall. If they, as you said, if they spread out towards that church, make a sort of... Oh, Chico's crashed. Oh, has he? Oh,
Chico?
I think he must have crashed. Huh?
That's suboptimal.
That's rough. At least he's in a position where he can get back in and be fine. He's got level 3 vest as well, so it's not all. What is it? There's a rainbow behind every cloud, or whatever the phrase.
Some jump cables, Lars is coming down with the jump cables to get the car going.
He might need it on his heart actually, with the lack of movement. Needs a bit of a mental jump start. But we see that the zone is zooming now, and they're sort of being forced towards that the Ukrainian wall. And I'm nervous. I think is the way to put it. But he's here. What's he doing?
He's here now. He got his gun out. Maybe he's back in now. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure. But Trico is. There we go.
He's back.
Yep.
He didn't die.
It was he knew he was going to get some screen time for that, so he just embraced it.
Let's get on. It kind of looks like that initial group of Dutch players have actually found a way in. They found a hole in the defensive line, but I'm worried that they're just going to get collapsed on, right? If the Ukrainians can recognize that it's only like 5-6 players. Well, that's not good. Run away.
Reverse!
Did he flip?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
And his car got stuck on what? On the side of the rock. That is, that's unfortunate. Thing being, I'm not sure they know. Like, I'm actually not sure that they know he's here.
Yeah, it's one of those things where because you can't see your teammates on the map at all times, sometimes you don't really recognize that it's an enemy next to you. But now they'll know. Now he's shooting at them, and he's not hit a bullet yet, but that car is so low. Yeah. What damage escapes? I have a sneaky suspicion that he's not long for this world.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either, unless if the cavalry arrives. You can see Focus is coming on up, maybe to pick him up. I'm not sure. Could prove fatal, though, if they do opt to try and rest him. Having said that, the Dutch team doesn't seem like they care too much to aggress here.
And it kind of feels like the Ukrainians have just let them pass. Like they've allowed this group of, like, I think it's about 9 or 10 players to just get through the defensive line, right? They can get into the circle. And I want to see the Ukrainians punish that, because they have this big group on the east, which, yes, is holding out the circle, but I think eventually they're going to recognize that all the Dutch players are on the west, all funneling through the same area. And that big fight, I think, is going to happen quite early.
Let's see. The fight is escalating. Bub finds 2. Nice shooting there. Perfect. Dix and Natron both fall down. Bram went down as well. So a little bit of a response coming in, but it's Bub with the M249 who's going to be able to do the initial damage.
And you see now the Ukrainians are starting to sort of corral the Dutch players into that area around Witsko and Yorti, right? They're trying to force them into that same position. And yes, it's in the circle, but if you can just isolate them on the north side of that road and start picking them off one by one, you're going to open up a big advantage for your team and arguably going to put yourself in a position to win the game.
Yeah, let's see. Art tries to hit some, needs to fall back. Their opponents everywhere. Does manage to prone down full damage, as you can see, Fools as well. And we didn't get to get a look at the rosters as we came into this one, but there are, I can tell you, both teams have a lot of very high caliber players. But as you were saying prior to the game starting, I feel like a little bit of an edge has to go in favor of Duquesne, at least in terms of like individuals on the roster. Yeah,
but the problem right now is that a lot of their sort of, not necessarily best players, but they're more experienced players are on that eastern group that were holding the area east of Lyons. And right now, they're just not doing anything. They're having absolutely no impact on the game because the Dutch players are all just funneling in on the west. Yeah. So I want to see that group now just group up with the rest of the team and just take that big gunfight before the full Dutch team can pull up and get involved here, because the Dutch team is still rotating in. They're still pretty spread out, right? So if you can collapse on the first group, if you can take them out before the reinforcements can arrive, then you can just start taking those pockets out one by one and just push your man advantage pretty high. I mean, you see like half of the Dutch teams in the blue, right? So if you can take that gunfight against the group in the middle of the circle, you're always going to be in an advantage.
I was actually a little surprised to see so many of the Ukrainian players stay out towards Porto Paraíso just because I felt like, I mean, of course, they don't know where the opponents are going to be pushing in from, but if they wanted to set up kind of a perimeter, it was just a really weak one.
Yeah, and they left a massive gap in the western side as well, which just allowed all this massive group here, just allowed them in for free. I mean, yes, they lost a couple of players doing it, but I mean, you look at the fact that it's 28-28. Realistically, now the Netherlands have gone from being in a really rough spot to actually being in a pretty good one.
Indeed. Now let's see where this one goes. Continues to go towards the east, but as you said, there has been a foothold obtained by the Dutch, and they're going to continue to move forward. There's still a ton of players miles out in the blue. You see Mister making his way on down. Trico just made his way in from the blue. This is the second player we see go down to the blue. We saw Laura go down just before. Now Mouse gets run over by Smash. Already find himself a bike, so he's going to be all right. But it is phase 3 already. It is hurting quite a bit.
Yeah, and you see those HP bars and all the players, they're getting low. I mean, they should be able to make it with one more first aid. They'll get to the zone, but it's a question of, do they have one more first aid? Because I'm not sure they do.
Jumps into the car. Continue moving forward. How will this go? Will they make it down, or will players end up going down to the circle? Numbers are still pretty even, but I think there are a few more. Wait, is that a PRDM? Oh no, it wasn't. Okay, I think there are a few more players from the Ukrainian team actually in the blue still.
And the boom spotting the reinforcements finally arriving. He should be able to get a couple of shots in, but no, they're going into cover. So I mean, now you're expecting. I think Ukraine still has the better position in the circle, right? They still have more control than the Dutch do. But the fact that the Dutch have so many players at this compound now, they can start to take those fights against the little pockets. Like if they can shut down this northern group and push them at advantage to like 3 or 4 players, then they're going to be in a really good spot to just take that big gunfight later on and just out-trade their way to the win.
Faye is looking for info. Has a car here. Not exactly the best parking I've ever seen, but it is parked regardless. Trying to look on over towards the Ukrainian team. And again, Ukraine is I mean, at least currently the ones playing defensive, but neither of these two teams really look to aggress right now. I think it's a matter of waiting those next 20 seconds and see where the circle's going to go.
So if there's one player you absolutely do not want to fight right now, it's Silas. Just on that eastern edge. I think he got banned from the game for 72 hours recently because he was doing so well in ranked mode that people thought he was cheating. But I mean, like those kind of players, I think need to have a big impact in this game. Right? It's like Silas. I kind of feel like players like Trico need to have a big influence on this Dutch team to make them win over this Ukrainian team. Because realistically, I think the sort of the average across the Ukrainian team is better than the average across the Dutch.
Yeah, you'd think so. Circle does. I mean, I don't want to necessarily say it favors the Dutch, but it does allow for them to stick around where they were, and it's going to be Ukraine's task to push further forward. Should be possible. There are plenty of ridges to play around these. I think Sixtet's finally making his way to the circle, but only 20 seconds before he has to move again.
I think we always say high ground is strong in Nations Royale, right? Like being able to shoot down is really powerful. And I mean, if you look at this circle, the Dutch have that high ground in the compound on the northern side. That is pretty much the highest point left. So if they can turn that into an advantage, you know, I mean, if you look at this, it basically gets lower as you get towards the sea, right? So you're expecting that those Dutch players have the advantage in terms of positioning. But I still feel like there's enough map control from the Ukrainians that if we say, let's say, get a circle that centers up or a circle that comes slightly south, it's going to be really rough for the Dutch to push in.
Well, they are in right now, and they need to do as much damage as they can before the next circles will eventually pop. Let's see. People are falling. Majority of them right now Ukrainian, some of them to the blue, some of them to fire from the Dutch team. And I don't know. I mean, it could still go either way, despite the numbers being slightly in favor for Netherlands. I feel like it could still go either way.
And this is where that group that we saw go towards El Pozo were like really shut down, not necessarily by the other players, but by the fact that they didn't get any vehicles. They were forced to rotate so late that I think 4 or 5 of them died to the blue. So maybe a bit of a mistake from Ukraine, and it has pushed that man advantage to 3 now for the Dutch. I mean, if Artis is going to hit shots like that all game, then I don't see the Dutch winning, but you'd think that man advantage is something they can turn into a win.
Yeah, he killed me in a ranked game earlier today as well. That was bad. I did knock him first. Not gonna lie, I knocked him. I feel like I actually lasered him. I should say he got wrecked. But I'm just not. I wasn't the flusher in that moment. And then
in my placement games, I got killed by a doozy in 3 out of 5 of them.
That's bad, man.
Yeah, it was rough. I killed best block in one of them, so I was proud of that one.
That's something.
But, yeah, running into a full stack of Na'Vi players in your placement games is rough.
Doesn't exactly make things any easier, that's for sure. So numbers still in favor for Netherlands. We haven't really seen the full-on brawl yet, but we are seeing players move closer and closer to one another, and we can only expect that within at least this next circle, the final battle will commence.
Yeah, I think this next phase is pretty much, like we always talk about attack and defense, right? The circle sort of chooses which teams can be on defense. It looks like it's going to be the Netherlands now with the control of the compound in the center of the circle. But now it's about, can Ukraine find a way to engage on the compound, find a way to storm it and break through the Dutch defense. And this kind of flank, if they can knock a couple players and flush them out, this kind of flank from Orange and Kotsnak is really strong.
Orange does find Michelle. Michelle goes down. There's actually only a few players in this compound. So while they do have the circle, if Ukraine commits to a push in this direction, I don't see that these 3-4 Dutch players can really hold off against it.
Yeah, that's where you need some of the reinforcements from the north to come down and sort of strengthen up this position, beef it up a little bit, because otherwise, I mean, you're looking at the caliber of players like Orange. We've seen so many times in international competitions do pretty great things. So against players that don't necessarily have that experience, you'd expect those Ukrainian players are going to be at the advantage, right? And it looks like they're going for the push now, flooding the southern side. But people like Chico are coming to reinforce now.
Orange just looking around. He expects there to be more people in the compound, and understandably so, Korea is just around the corner. Lars seems coming down to try and help too. And I think they're starting to realize now, the Dutch, that they need to do something to hold off down here. Yeah,
but the problem right now is people like Orange are so isolated from the rest of their team. Like, if you look at how far away he is from everyone else now, I mean, realistically, at most he'll get like one knock. He needs to just wait for the rest of the team to push in. But Smash rather is going to get that lineup, going to get him down. And Orange suddenly went from being impactful to just doing nothing.
It's unfortunate. Trico finds one with a nade, and here comes the entire Ukrainian team, it seems, pushing around. But it seems like Netherlands are quick to respond. Trico does get naded, so he's going to have to try and crawl back and see if he can get rest. But the kills are being traded really well right now. Ukraine is pushing uphill, and they're getting a lot of kills with it.
Yeah, but the Dutch team are just flooding it now. They've recognized that this is the fight that's going to decide the game. And if they can just shut the Ukrainians down on the southern side, then they should be in a good spot. But so far, it's definitely in favor of the Ukrainian players.
You gotta think they're coming in, and they're coming in strong. 4 damage, got damage done to 1, but immediately had to duck down because 3 or 4 more players were over the top of him. No, he gets seen. I thought he was gonna be able to stay incognito for a little while, but now the tides have turned. Ukraine are all over this leaderboard.
And Silas needs to start having an impact here. He's one of the star players on this team, and he's just not having an impact on the fight so far. I want to see him get involved, get close, get in the main fight, because otherwise it's going to be a rough one.
Very easily get very difficult. Silas has been called out. Now Marcus sees him, doesn't manage to find the kill though. Circle shifted away from pretty much everyone, to be fair. So if you're Ukraine, do you continue this push?
I think you just have to push that man advantage, right?
Back towards the east side.
Yeah, I mean, they've already got that, was it, a 6-man man advantage now from this fight. If they can just push that to 8, maybe even 10, it doesn't matter that they don't have the circle, because they can just overwhelm the Dutch defensive line. So I want to see them just keep pushing, just keep putting the pressure on, and just work their way through the Dutch players.
Doesn't really seem like there's a reason not to. All of the Dutch players have backed off, it seems, at least the ones that survived. Made it in. Trilino, unfortunately, wasn't quite able to get that. Will fall. But the numbers advantage now, 9 players in favor for Ukraine. As I say, that make that 8 because Hobbycock does fall down. But I don't know. I mean, they have the position. Again, we talked about high ground, right? There's open field that Ukraine has to push through if they don't want to wrap the west side. What do you do if you're Ukraine here? You said push through. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, I think you just have to flood that western group, right? I mean, you have there's like a hillside that you can push up pretty easily on the west, where these players that Daboom's looking at right now just won't have an impact. So if they can just keep flooding through these little ditches, as happening right now, they should be good.
See, Yori does fall, so does Sejong. For every player Netherlands loses here, the deficit becomes that much bigger, and it makes it that much more difficult to make a comeback in. And a lot of kills are going in favor right now for Ukraine. Silas is backlining, and as you were saying as well, with a guy with this amount of talent, you need him up close. You need him to do damage. You need him to take out players, not play the backline the way that he's doing right now. Unfortunately, doesn't seem like it's going to matter much. 20 versus 7 now in favor of Briefing.
Yeah, big blahs so far. And I think it was just because the Dutch didn't really commit full to that gunfire, right? I mean, Silas is going to get 2, but realistically, those 2 players are not going to get flushed, and he just gets taken out, and there's no one there to trade. Every time the Ukrainians are just overwhelming the small groups that the Dutch had. Because they didn't fully commit to that gunfire in the southwest, it just meant that it was like 30 versus 15 at all times.
And that's going to be the end of it. Netherlands fall to Ukraine. 20 people left alive for Ukraine. And I must say, I mean, they put up a decent fight, Netherlands. It just seemed like all the way through, Ukraine were, I don't want to necessarily say in a better position, but again, like we've seen so many other times before, the spearhead strategy kind of overwhelms the more dexterous, spread out, try and see if we can do a lot of different things with small squads type engagement.
Yeah, I mean, the captain of Hungary yesterday said that the strategy is just press W, right? And it kind of felt like that was the Hungarian or the Ukrainian strategy this game, at least. They just recognized this is the gunfight we're going to take, and they just put everyone in it. They put all their eggs in that one basket. And I think in this kind of game mode, that's exactly what you need to do.
At least it's proven successful time and time again. And can't really say anything about it. It was some tough circles, to be fair, for both teams. I mean, even though for the most part it was Dutch players who were miles out in the blue, I think we ended up losing more Ukrainian players to the blue in this game. So interesting affair in that regard. But you got to give it to Ukraine as well. I mean, yes, they get the circles early, but later on when they started shifting back towards the west, towards Netherlands, they also kind of registered the fact that if we don't make a push on this compound, it might be too little too late. Unfortunately for them, because you could tell that Netherlands were kind of in the middle of reinforcing. What do you say? Not reinforcing. Like getting more troops down towards the compound. And had they been just 15, 20 seconds later, they wouldn't have gone up against 4 people. It would might have been 10, 15.
Yeah, and I think really the big problem for the Netherlands was that they didn't get those players like Silas, like Trico. They didn't get them to have an impact on the match, right? You expect to have like 3 or 4 kills in these kind of games, just weren't involved in that main gunfight, and they just got overwhelmed at the end.
Well, that was game number 1, guys. It is a best of 5, so there's plenty more games left to play. We are going to go take a short break, though, so do us a favor. Stick around. We'll see you for more PUBG again real soon. Welcome back, everyone, to Nations Royale. I'm Toby, joined by Saint, and well, we saw Netherlands fall short against Ukraine in the first game on Miramar. Now we are headed on over to Erangel for what I assume will be the only Erangel of this matchup. Is it going to go to all 5 games this one, you think, Lou?
I mean, with what we saw in that map 1, I don't think so. But I mean, there is an opportunity to turn around. I kind of feel like this game is going to decide how the whole best of 5 goes. Right? This one, the Dutch players need to show what they're capable of. They need to show, make a statement about their not their intentions, but their abilities in this. Because if this is just another blowout, then I just don't see Sanok going any other way.
No, and I feel like Sanok is, I mean, on Erangel and Miramar, I guess to a certain extent on Vikendi too, you could argue that circles can win you games, so that the lesser team of the 2 in any given match can get fortunate and win a game because they were simply just gifted circles. It's not always that, but it does pay a factor every now and again. On Sanok, because everyone is forced so close against one another, I see very few circles that would straight up determine outcomes in Nations Royale, that is. I'm trying to think, and I can't really come up with anywhere where one set of 32 players would have that big of an upper hand against the other.
I mean, the closest you could think of is the Northwestern Island, but we've had that circle twice. Yeah. We had it twice in Asia, and both times the team that wasn't on the island won. So like, I don't know. I think Sanok is just the mechanical gun skill is so important on that map compared to the other three. Like you can't out-rotate your teammates because your enemies because you're just not in vehicles, right? You're never in those cars. But I think this is the map where the Netherlands need to show that they can take a fight, because if the Ukraine get confident with this, they build the momentum by getting those first two maps, and then they go into the one where mechanical gun skill is everything, being the team that you'd expect should have better mechanics, then I just see this being a 3-0.
Well, let's see now. The players have taken to the sky, and we are over on Erangel. Zoom seems like he's going to have military all to himself. That's pretty convenient. One guy on Sosnovka. That's pretty cool. On the other side of things, seems like Netherlands have managed to claim Pachinki. I'm not sure if Spartak and Dream for You initially wanted to go down there, but it seems like they have opted to go away. So a bit of a divide in players. It's well, I guess you can say Ukraine is playing more coast-bound, and Netherlands playing more sender, except there are some Ukrainian players up in the middle, alongside, kind of in between all the Ukrainians.
Yeah, it's like what we saw with Pozo, right, where we had the little Ukrainian outpost in the Dutch losing spot. But that circle, I mean, yes, Ukraine has the center of the map, but you're looking at this and you're thinking the Dutch players should have an easier rotation, right? I mean, pretty much half the Ukrainian team can't rotate in without going through the Dutch players. So I'm looking at this. I want to see the Dutch players take a lot of control of like your lumberyard area and your sort of eastern side of that road, right? And if they can do that, then it's going to be a really good game.
Hairball shooting over towards the guys in the vehicle. Fortunately, nothing's being connected. But this is what I was saying. I mean, they are literally in between all the Dutch players, and I think it's a wise decision not to stop and loot here. You want to get going. You want to, for A, you're not inside the circle. B, you're deep behind enemy lines. So just get the hell out of there, and then start doing things. I don't think it really pays off to try and be the hero in any of this now. I think they are crashing straight into Lars though, and he should be ready for it.
Yeah, this opportunity. I think they're just going to go
past.
Yeah, you'd expect they're probably just going to head to like Shelter and maybe all the way to Milton and just join up with the rest of the gang. You know, just get that map control, because you can loot in the center of the map. You know it's free.
Yeah,
the Ukrainians know it, they have it, so they can start taking control of those compounds early on and put themselves in a strong position. But we saw last game that the Netherlands couldn't really defend. Right, that when the Ukrainians attacked, they were overwhelmed, and I think that's been a sort of a recurring theme of all of it. Because generally, like the whole Nations Royale, right? Because generally the attacking team just floods one position with like 25, 30 players, and the defensive team will have like 8 or 9 there that just can't hold on. So I'm looking at this circle and thinking maybe this time the Netherlands have that opportunity to be the attacking team. And if they can find that gunfight where they're like, 20 players versus 10, and they can win that out, then maybe that's their win condition.
Yeah, because I'm sitting and I'm looking at the guys up towards Severny, the guys in South George, Gatka as well. You have to, on the Dutch side of things, read that these guys are extremely split right now, and therefore potentially try and execute a push before they get together. There's also the other opportunity to just run each other over. We saw Hungary have great success in doing that yesterday. But jokes aside, I feel like, I mean, yes, okay, so Netherlands are somewhat split too, but they have a much easier way of just join forces on Spiro. Everyone full speed send it into the corner there, and then push out from there. And I feel like if they can execute that fast enough, they should be able to keep the numbers in their advantage.
And it's such an unusual thing to say in PUBG, where you want to take like a gunfight phase 1. Right? Generally speaking, like the whole mindset of PUBG is about getting to that late game with all your team alive, keeping like a high economy with like high HP vests, a lot of meds and so on. But realistically, in Nations Royale, if you can find that early gunfight where you pick off the stragglers from the other team, it's so important to do that, because it puts you in such a massive advantage going into the rest of the match.
Truly does. Now let's see Corsac making the run for it. That's another thing, right? I mean, there are only so many vehicles, and it's not esports mode, so you don't have the hard spawns to work with either. You do have gliders. I haven't really seen anyone utilize them, which I think is a little unfortunate, but if you get unlucky, I mean, I guess there's a theoretical world where you don't get a single vehicle in all of Pachinki, and if you have 20 players there, that's a lot of people you have to taxi to any given circle.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that the Dutch players are just not picking up their teammates right now.
Yeah,
driving past. A bit of lack of communications. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at this. And that little northern group around shelter, I kind of feel like you can punish that if you're the Netherlands. If you can work out that that's Ukrainian players there that you can take out, it's only going to be like a 3-4 man advantage, but it's an early gunfight you can take, and you can get some sort of advantage in the rest of the game.
4 damage and Mr. Dre sending it full speed forward. They now know where the at least part of the defensive line for there are actually 3 on that vehicle. Part of the defensive line for Ukraine is they're going to try and see if they can wrap further east. If you're Ukraine and you read this, fortify that east side road, and you can get a ton of kills.
Yeah, and they already have a group there. I think there's like 5 or 6 Ukrainian players holding the road. Yeah, we see they have both compounds already. So there's an opportunity if the Dutch players come sailing along on the road. It's going to be a little bit dangerous, I think, for the Dutch players. But it looks like they're going to try and take control of the hillside, try and get lumberyard, which I really like. As we said last game, high ground is everything in this. So if you can take control of the big hill that's in the center of the circle, you're going to be in a great spot. Here we go.
They've managed to push forward. Yeah, exactly. They've managed to push forward and found themselves a little bit of a resting place, at least for now. But do they want to start already now pushing further out and kind of securing the perimeter, or do you just sit tight here and wait for the rest of your teammates to come help you out?
Well, I think you want to get control of the whole hill, right? Like, yes, you're only 8 there for now, so you can't properly spread out. But that's not good, Eki. That's not good. Is he going to make it out? I think he's actually going to escape because there's only one guy shooting him. It's not even the guys in the compound that he drove to that are shooting him, so he's going to be okay for now. But I want to see them get control of the main lumberyard hill, and then the compound on the west side and that little dip. If they can get control of that as well and get like a proper defensive line on the hilltop, they're going to be in a really strong spot. And especially with this circle now, like half the circle is that hill, or maybe even more. Is just that hill.
You gotta feel like you can see how Ukraine is sending it from the west side in right now. If they can take Monkey, if they can take some of these compounds beneath the lumber mill hills, and the circle then goes south, like what do? You gotta feel like it's so much easier potentially for Ukrainian players to push up that mountain than it would be for Dutch players to push down. Did they really sit and prep that for so long that they completely mistimed the sound cue?
Yeah, that was
is that how tier B we are today? Come on, guys, you can do better than that. If you're gonna sound cue jokes, then you gotta time them right.
Unacceptable for the production.
Yeah, I'm. You know what I mean? They can try and interrupt us with all the excuses they want. If they're gonna try and make like players on us, then they damn better be ready for it. That's an excusable production.
LF new production after this match.
LF meme generators in Sweden. Yes, please. Hello. No, jokes aside. Let's look at the scenario potentials here, because Ukraine are. Well, I don't think anybody really wants to move, at least not for the next 34 seconds, just because, as you can see, Ukraine actually did exactly what I said in fortifying all these positions down south. If this next circle goes south, what in the universe does Netherlands do?
You're just going to Hail Mary into the compounds, right? You've got to crash maybe 8-10 players into one compound and just pray that you can outtrade in that fight. It's just become so rough. But I do really like what the Netherlands have done in taking control of the hillside. Yes, it might come south. But if it does then come north onto the hilltop, that high ground is going to be so important, and it will definitely be their win condition, if using that high ground to their advantage. So I think for now, I've just seen the circle. Oh no, it's gone south.
That's what I was going to say. No. Netherlands, what's the plan? They must have thought about it, right? Because they've been sitting here for a while. They must have said, there's also the scenario where the circle goes south. What do we do? I want to see them execute a thought out plan, because as many as 32 players are, it's also not that many if you're trying to hold down like 15 compounds. So there's got to be kind of a hole in the wall somewhere.
And there's 3 Ukrainian players taken out in the space of a couple of seconds. They should all be rezzed. But there's an opportunity now where you can use that that pressure that you've put on by getting 3 knocks. You can use that as a flood. And it looks like they're going to go. I want to see them crash this one place. Send 8-10 people into Monkey. Just take control of it. Take it off the Ukrainian team. Because I don't really see another way to win, and it looks like that's exactly what they're going to do, but they're a bit spread out, and FaZe going down straight away. RT's just going to get 2 for free, and the rest of the team's just not there to help out.
There are a lot of players from Ukraine in this compound. If they could pick which one they wanted to go to, maybe this one wasn't the one they should have selected. They're falling like flies. I love the commitment. I love them saying, you know what, let's go now. But it's the one vehicle at a time, If they could have hit that wall with 7 vehicles at the same time, maybe this would have been different. Let's see if they can make something happen.
Pretty much half the team is at this compound knocked right now. Ukraine just slaughtering them. 10-player advantage, make that 11. It's just, I mean, there are a lot of Ukrainian players knocked here, and maybe there's a chance that they can get a bunch of reses if they can clear out one of the 2 of the buildings, but I just don't see it happening. It's 16 players alive for the Netherlands now. That crash, I do like the idea, but I don't like the execution.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. The perfect scenario would have been that they get the initial knock and then they can just send it. But I mean, as much as I said, there must be a hole in the wall somewhere. That monkey compound had, I think, 9 players in it, and you're looking at other compounds which had maybe 3. They weren't. I mean, the circle hasn't closed in before now. They weren't in that much of a hurry to just crash the first and best option they could find, and I feel like they lost the game on it.
I don't necessarily think the crash was the wrong thing to do. It was just like a bit unlucky. I don't think they realized how many Ukrainian players were there, right? Oh, what a nade from Artie. He's just got 3 down. I think he's got like 6 or 7 kills this game. Yeah. It's absolute slaughter. And it just, let's say there were 5 Ukrainian players there. The crash should have been perfect. They would have got in, they would have got a lot of damage in, taking control of a pretty decent position in the circle. But they just happened to run into pretty much half the Ukrainian force. And it wasn't quite cohesive, right? I mean, they went like 1 by 1 in the vehicles, and it just allowed Artie to knock like 10 of them. I think he got so many kills.
It was
7. Jesus.
It went the way that I don't want to say expected to, but maybe, I mean, I tried to run through a couple of different scenarios in my mind, and I was like, if it does go south, the only thing Netherlands can do is just send it somewhere. They did. Unfortunately for them, it didn't quite work out, and we now find ourselves in a 2-0 in favor of Ukraine, with Sanok coming up next. Saint, we talked a little bit about it before this game, but this is going to be a 3-0, or are we going to see these Netherlands Dutch guys come back in it?
Well, I kind of feel like this game, it went so one-sided because of the circle. It put the Netherlands in a really bad position where they had to take this Hail Mary play, you know, the low percentage crash. So maybe we're looking at Sanok as a map where circles don't necessarily screw you over in Nations Royale. Maybe there's. I think if there is a map that you can reset and you can, you know, arrest the momentum of the other team, I think it is Sanok because of how different it plays out compared to the others.
Fair enough. Let's hope for the Dutch that they can indeed manage to do that. We are gonna hop over to Sanok in just a few moments, but before we do, I mean, I love to see it. I mean, it's rare that we actually see that. You know what? Screw it. Let's just go. I love that they actually attempted it. I thought I was, oh no, now it's going to be casually running down the hill and getting killed by one by one. But no, it was everyone at the same time and all get killed at the same time. If you went for a potty break there, you probably missed it, because I think once the first knock came in, the whole fight was over in a matter of less than a minute. But that's game number 2, guys. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back and ready with game number 3 after the break. So stick around. We'll see you in just a moment. Zero is the lead that Ukraine has over Netherlands as we head into what could potentially be the 3rd and final match for Netherlands before they'd be kicked down to the lower bracket. I'm joined by Saint, and we have got at least 1 more map to go. Maybe it could be 3 more depending on how things go on Sanok. But we've talked about Sanok a bit already. Saint, let's continue the talk, and we're both saying that the map is the least circle dependent, but maybe more so the most gun skill dependent.
I think it's kind of that map where you see the big gunfight happen and the whole map revolves around that one fight where it's like 20 versus 20. And whichever team commits the most to the gunfight, whichever team goes balls to the wall and just puts their whole team in it, puts all their eggs in that basket, that's the generally the team that wins out. We've seen it, I think, time and time again, where like we look back to Hungary and Greece, where Hungary literally just put the whole team in one group and just pushed through the defensive line of Greece, and it worked out.
It's going to be interesting to see how things will unfold as we head on over to the map in just a short moment. From the 2 games we've seen so far, last game you could argue that had we been in a flip-flop parallel universe where it was Netherlands who were down the hill and it was Ukraine who had to push down into them, maybe. I mean, Netherlands probably won at the same fashion that Ukraine ended up doing now. But I kind of sort of feel like that was the case on Miramar, where it was Ukraine who had to push into the compound, and they actually made it work.
Yeah, the one slight difference is that the compound on Miramar has that big ridge next to it on the eastern side, where you can like stack a lot of players there, and there's not really any way for the other team to shut you down. But I do kind of feel like it would have at least been a much closer game, I think, if it was the other way around on Erangel. But I mean, they still have this chance to reset arrest the momentum of the Ukrainian team, reset the series. One, not fully because it's going to be 2-1 still, but I think if they win this, there's a genuine chance that Netherlands could come all the way back and reverse sweep the series.
Yeah, there's a chance. Let's see. Players are split out all over the place. It's as if Ukraine has opted to surround the Dutch players. They have gone for a full-on 4 horsemen strategy with players in all corners.
Yeah, and they've got control of that boot camp area, which we saw Hungary use to quite good effect in the last series that we watched yesterday. So they've got a pretty decent control of the center area of the map, the Netherlands. But we look at that, Ukraine has the whole south side. So maybe we're going to see that sort of the Dutch on the attack again, and see if they can prove that they have the mettle and they have what it takes to fight this Ukrainian team. But that circle, yes, it's gone towards that Ukrainian team on the south. Pardon me. But I mean, there's a way in for the Dutch.
And what is that way? Because if you kind of know where the Dutch players are right now. If I'm Ukraine, I pull everybody back from the Northwest Island, put them down on Spartak and the bridge on the left side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that Plan area, I think, as well, is going to be really important. If you could just lock the Dutch team onto Boot Camp Hill, keep them in that sort of area of the map and force them to run out in the open. Because, I mean, once you run south towards that road, towards the bridges, there's so much exposed area where the Ukrainian players can shut them down. So I want to see the Dutch players on the sort of the northwestern edge. Oh, I'll hold that as Korea has found someone that is not a friend. And here's him.
He was shot at earlier as well, so I think he's well aware that he's deep behind enemy territory. Ooh, did they see each other? They did. Korea does get the knock, and it seems like they also had someone miss out on getting into the game to begin with. So maybe that's going to be the turnaround.
Yeah, Kretenok went down to Bram, I think. So it's actually 2 kills in favor of Netherlands. And that's something that they need, right? They need that early advantage because we spoke about Sanok being that thing where you just have the big gunfight that happens. And realistically, if you can get like a 3 or 4 man advantage before that gunfight and come into it with the added guns, the added firepower, then you should be in a really strong position to close it out.
Especially on this one. But you know what, guys? Let's despite them being down 2-0, I'm kind of curious to hear how the comms are working over at the Dutch side of things. Let's listen in to what's happening in Netherlands.
Alright, Hatin, you gotta start moving as well. If you guys have vehicles, you can easily take vehicles towards it. Like, we're all gonna group up there.
A lot of communication. I feel like we're hearing one side. I feel like we're hearing one side of the conversation.
Well, I think Chico is broadcasting to everyone else and they're listening because he's I'm pretty sure he's the captain, right? So he's in charge of the team, and it definitely feels like they're going for that early gunfight strategy, right? He said that he wants them to group up, but I think something that's worth bringing up is the fact that they're communicating in English. I find it really interesting because I know some of the players on the team are Belgian, like Silas is Belgian, right? So I wonder if that's a bit of a disadvantage coming in. I mean, yes, a lot of these players can speak English pretty well. I mean, most of Europe can these days, but it's still a disadvantage not being able to communicate in your home language.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think for the most part, most countries in Europe would maybe to some extent. I mean, I've seen people where like a full Danish lineup in a game where they communicate in English just because call outs and whatnot. Like the terminology is English anyway, so what's the big deal? And their coach was from, I think, somewhere else. So they opted to go like English communication, despite them all actually being Danish. Of course, they'll be Danish every now and again, but for the most part, in terms of gameplay, it was always English comms. So I can see both sides being reasonable, but I do agree that it's a little interesting.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as big a disadvantage as if it was English people not speaking English, because we are notoriously bad at learning other languages. But yeah, I mean,
your own language.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I think most Dutch people are better at English than the majority of England. But it is still something where, there's that added step of, I mean, yes, they've probably spoken English enough that they don't need to, the processing doesn't take as long, but it's still not as, it's never as comfortable as when you're speaking Dutch or Belgian. But I suppose it's out of necessity. The players like Silas, I don't think Silas can speak Dutch. So I would assume that's the reason why it's happening. But yeah, as I said, I'm curious whether that's going to be a negative effect on the team.
True. It's also
what was he shooting?
As you can say, it's also kind of interesting that, I mean, and I talked to Martin Avenger about it the other day when we were casting another tournament, where when you're talking your native language, you tend to kind of jibber jabber a little more, like it becomes more conversation. Whereas if you're forced to, it was in regards to, who was it? I don't remember. But a team that had been communicating in their own language, and then they got players from another country, so now they'd be communicating in English. It was Norkis. It was Elgiganten. How they'd be used to always communicate in their native language. Now they had to communicate in English. Is when you're forced to communicate in another language, you pay much more attention because you have to focus a lot more in order to understand what's being said and whatnot. So your communication tends to be shorter and more on point, and more, and you just focused in another way, which I actually found kind of interesting.
Yeah, so maybe it's something that would be a bit of advantage. And we saw that, I think what we were hearing, because we only had Trico speaking, right? I would assume because he's the captain that he's basically like, I think they're in separate channels, right? Where they have the call where you have your platoons in, and then he's also in a call with everyone to broadcast the plan. And they were speaking about how they want to group up. So I expect they're going to try and go for that big gunfight, like early on. They're going to try and find this, 30 versus 20 or 30 versus 10 fight they can take. And they have gone onto this island. And we were saying we wanted Ukraine to hold them out, right? And it's just not happened. So there's an opportunity here where the Dutch can take a gunfight against a little isolated pocket of Ukrainian players and push that 3-man advantage to like a 6 or a 7 and win the map.
Let's see. There is a little bit of an additional zone, I guess you can say, coming in behind Laura and Bram if they don't turn around. That's another blue zone, a blue wall of death, we should call it, of Ukrainian players pushing forward. Laura, you might want to look over your shoulder just once, because Orange is literally sprinting right behind you, and he's got to know. He's got to know that's not teammates.
Yeah, but it kind of feels like the Dutch aren't paying attention here, whether that's out of
that just is dangerous,
ignorance, or the fact that they know, but then they're not caring, maybe. But there's this opportunity here that Laura and Bram and there's the stragglers of the Dutch team, right? They can get shut down, and that ban advantage can disappear in a couple of seconds.
Tifu, because that's his name, is rotating on over as well. He's not as big of a Ukrainian death wall, but he's here. He's here. Maybe he can pick a player off. And the thing is, I mean, if you get knocked, we talked about it yesterday as well. If you get knocked from a corner or from another angle, you can never expect there to only be one guy there, especially not in this game mode where he could be backed up by 15 people a few seconds later.
Yeah, it might be like a bit of a secret army coming down from the north side, just trying to strike them in the back. So yeah, it throws confusion in. I think confusion is a really sort of strong, I don't know, ability, I suppose, that you can use.
A powerful
to advantage. Yeah, powerful tool, that's the word, that you can use. So if you do have those stragglers that can, if they just get knocked, go down, and then there's no more pressure, then you can sort of be confident there's no one else there. But when you just have the guy that starts shooting at you and then disappears for like 30 seconds, and then suddenly you're like, you have to send 4 or 5 players to go look, right? Yeah. It can scare the team, and it can stop them from making those pushes that potentially win the game. Because we see now the Dutch are trying to take a bit of control, trying to take this sort of spearhead into the circle. If that shot then comes in behind, do they then have to turn around?
That's the big question. Ukraine seems to have let these guys through. They are still somewhat isolated to the western side of the circle. But I feel like, I mean, if we move any further east, we're headed into a time where I guess you can say that the compounds are going to be scarce and it's going to be open field battling. But look at how towards the north, how many Ukrainian players actually aren't here yet. If this fight starts escalating down by Pova and Dream for you now, if this fight pops off, I don't feel like Ukraine has the manpower to really stand strong against a Dutch attack. So I want to see if Ukraine gets pushed here by Netherlands, that they just fall back and wait for kind of the backup.
Yeah. But I kind of feel like with what we've seen from the Netherlands so far, that they don't really want to go for those fights. So it kind of feels like maybe we're seeing a switch up in strategy now, where the Netherlands are trying to be more aggressive. They're trying to embrace the shift W strategy that the Hungarian captain said was so strong, because it definitely feels like they want to make this push up the hill now.
Yeah, indeed it does, and it seems like that's exactly what's happening. Trico, Silas, Mr. and Aki, all talented players making their way forward. There are Ukrainian players in the compound, though they're ready and waiting.
And right now, it seems like the Ukrainian players are getting the favorable trades, but it definitely feels like a 50-50. And all those important players that we said in map 1 were not having an impact are all here. They're all in this gunfight now. So I want to see your Erkis, your Silas, your Tricos getting 2-3 kills here and pushing the Ukrainians off this hilltop, because this position could be the win condition for them.
All right, now it's a pretty straight-on fight. A lot of kills coming on both sides. A lot right now, though, in favor of the Ukrainian team. You can see a lot of these players. I mean, it's a hilltop battle, and the players who aren't up there yet simply don't really have impact. But as I say that, now Ukraine is all over the kill feed. What is going on?
Yeah, the NLT players have joined the party. They're starting to strike now, and Spiro is going off with his M249. He's only got 1 kill, but I think he's got a couple more knocks. So, actually, Faye's coming and striking. He gets 2 down. This is a... I think if they can take control of this hillside and they can push Ukrainians off, then the Netherlands, you have to say, are the favourites of the game.
Yeah, seems like it could go their way. They do have the numbers advantage right now as well, and it seems like they've kind of broken a hole in this fortification that Ukraine had set. Now they're a little more spread all over the place, the Ukrainian players. As I say that, Spiro does come back with this M249, and I feel like that's going to be the gun of choice.
And he's got so many knocks.
When everyone is on top of each other, you do not want to have to spend time reloading.
And damage couldn't get him down. I think Spirit's going to get the kill. Oh, he survives on 1 HP. And he's going to get the rest. But I'm just looking at this now, then. The problem the Netherlands now have is they've got everyone in that compound, right? So the Ukrainians could just start spinning around them and start isolating them. And yes, there should be the advantage. Oh, the boom. That was naughty. Nice. Spiro goes down, though. Silas finally stepping into the fight, but he gets traded instantly. Like, we said Silas needs to have an impact. Yes, he got the 1 knock, but 1 knock and getting traded is not the kind of impact he needs to have.
A lot of kills coming in now for Netherlands. It's a back and forth kind of tug of war here, and I can't really tell who's going to end out on top. It's still, still everyone's kind of on top of each other. There's a lot of knocked Ukrainian players, and you can see already the kills being in favor of Netherlands. So if they can get some of these knocks converted into kills, you'd have to think it's going to go their way. But having said that, it's not over yet. ST-Fu is still over on the other side. You can see Necro down here is trying to have an impact from below as well, but he's, nope, not down just yet. I thought he was going to get flushed. Not that he said there he goes forward.
Yeah, Eki finally gets that kill, shuts down the unruly citizen of Neko there. But it kind of feels like now the Netherlands have finally showed up to this series, right? They finally showed what they can do in a gunfight. And yes, they're at the advantage, but there's quite a few knock players there. A lot of these players have no vests now. They have no helmets. So I still think it's anyone's game. And because of the fact that they're all now in this compound, literally the entire Dutch team is in this compound on the hill. There's still a big opportunity for the Ukrainians to just hold them there. Lars needs to have an impact on the series, but he's not even going to get 1 knock. Silas from behind? No.
Charles' teammate, that's a feels bad man. Eki is there though, doing more damage. You can see the Ukrainian players are kind of not caught, but somewhat isolated on the north side of this ridge. Eki is pushing forward now. Can't really get eyes on. Seems like he's just allowed to roam around as he pleases.
Yeah, but he has to make sure Silas isn't behind him, working for the Ukrainians. I think Silas got more kills with his teammates than he has on enemies so far this series, which is rough. But it's still like the Netherlands still have that 5-man advantage, and the kill feed is still in their favour. And the circle now has gone south, so this Ukrainian northern group is going to push back. And Erki can strike here, he can get a couple knocks for free, gets 2 and flushes them both out. So they're slowly pushing that man advantage in their favour. making sure they're trading effectively. And I mean, given the fact that they have the man advantage, as long as you're trading 1-for-1 every time, you're just going to win the game.
You gotta think this has got Netherlands written all over it. As I say that, they are still fighting. Ukraine not out of it just yet. Art is still alive. You have a few players caught kind of in between one another as well, but I mean, all these players are gonna get back on their feet on the Dutch side of things, and I think we're just kind of prolonging the inevitable. Art super camouflage with his pink M4. More kills coming in. He finally does get found. He was being a real pain in the butt for these Ukrainian players to try to kind of prevent the flank around. But you have here one player left alive. Taiji, what, buddy, are you planning on doing?
I think he has a friend next to him, but they're both
No.
Oh, he is. Yeah, as we say that. Yeah, so now he's in a 1v10. I mean, it's doable. I've seen wilder things in my time. Well, I say that, I probably haven't actually. It's probably a lie. But yeah, I mean, realistically, this should be a Dutch game. There he goes. There's the kill. So the Netherlands finally get a map. This was the game we said could arrest the motion of the Ukrainian team, could push it back and reset the series. And the Netherlands have done that. You know, we finally saw those players that we said needed to have an impact. Faye with 6 kills. I mean, Erki got those kills at the end. They were massive. So the established players on that Netherlands team finally stepping up, finally entering the series and proving what they can do.
Yeah, it was a really, really interesting fight. And we said it, right? It's going to come down to the individual gun skill. And that's really all it was. They pushed up. They were literally as close to one another, like as close to a melee fight as you could be with ranged guns. And I mean, yes, okay, Netherlands does start off with a 2-man advantage, but Ukraine were really quick in responding and got it back in their favor for a short while. But in the end of it, I guess Ukraine just ended up being too spread out, and you got to give credit to Netherlands for maybe reading that they were still kind of far apart from one another. That's why they engaged when they did.
And on that Erangel game, it kind of felt like the Netherlands were reluctant to take a gunfight until they had to, until they were forced to by the zone. Whereas in this one, you know, they could have just waited on the north side. They could have done nothing, but they went for that fight on the compound. They went to take the map control and the high ground, and it worked out really well. So that aggression that we just haven't seen so far for the Netherlands was perfect in this game, and it was exactly why they won the game.
Worked out real damn well for them. This does mean that we're headed on over to Vikendi. Will we also get to see Erangel once more? It's all going to come down to whether or not Netherlands can bring home this next game. There's still a match point to go for Ukraine. It's 2-1. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back and ready with more PUBG. Finally, Netherlands has a response to the onslaught that was the Ukrainian team plowing on through the first 2 games. We're back with more Nations Royale. I'm Toby, joined by Saint, and who knows? Maybe Vikendi will be the last map we get to see between these 2 teams today. Maybe it won't, but either way, we're getting to see Vikendi.
Yeah, always nice, always nice. But yeah, I think it was a little bit of a surprise, that map 3. I was sort of expecting Sanok to go the way of the team we'd seen do so well in the first 2 maps. So it was a pleasant surprise to see that bit of a switch up in the Dutch strategy. You know, they went for the more aggressive group up into one death ball and just hit them style, which definitely worked out. So I want to see a bit more of that. On Vikendi, it's not as easy to do because it's a much more spread out map. It's much bigger. A lot of the map is long range. So I still kind of feel like Ukraine's the favorite going into this map, but the Netherlands have finally shown what they can do and finally shown that they're capable of winning these maps.
Yeah, I mean, bringing home one of the maps here, yes, it was a cluster of an engagement. It could probably have gone either way, but they bring it home regardless. That's also got to be kind of a momentum boost. Maybe now coming into the next game, the players will be that little extra on when it comes to hearing what the comps are. I mean, we've literally seen, and it's like my #1 memory of any Nations Royale game ever. It's the perfect thing where I think it was Croatia, I believe, because it was it Croatia? I believe so. It was Spreezy. He was the captain for the team. He's driving this convoy, like we're talking 20 vehicles, all coming on Erangel, and he. We can't hear what he's saying, but it's very clear. We also learned that later, that he wanted, obviously, the team to rotate to a specific point. So he drives down this road and takes a right turn. the car behind him takes a right turn one road too early, and all the remaining cars follow the guy that took a turn too early, and they all end up getting slaughtered immediately after. Speech was like, I told them to follow me, and we were sitting and watching the game, and it was just so obvious that he knew what he wanted to do. It just doesn't always go that way, and I feel like that's telling for a lot of what we see in Nations Royale, where you can see all these different teams really trying to come up with these master plans, where sometimes, shift and W, that can really be the better play. And we saw that now from the Netherlands.
Yeah, Trico at the start of the game was saying, let's just group up, let's just go. And it worked out perfectly. But coming onto a map like this, especially if you get that early circle, it's very hard to find a way to make that work, because you kind of get, not forced, but encouraged by the game to spread out and take a bit of presence on the map. And but I want to see them recognize where the fights are going to happen, because if you are that team defending, it's often about recognizing where the attacking team is going to hit you. On that Miramar game, if they'd put more players on the south, maybe they could have held on. And so if you could recognize where you're going to get hit, where you're going to get attacked by the Ukrainians, then you can turn that defensive game into that big fight that you want to take.
Oh, Vikendi. How many trains will we see being utilized this time around? I mean, I gotta say, Ukrainian teams, they are kind of positioned around the train stations, so maybe that's a telling of a train battle to come. I hope so. As far as I know, the big train that goes around the entire island goes counterclockwise, so that won't really help a lot of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and with this circle as well, it's centered up pretty much perfectly centered. Right? We're heading towards the sort of area to the northwest of Castle, and around there, it's very compound focused. I think. I mean, less so on the new patch, the new version of Vikendi, but this center of the map is very much focused on those compounds. We have that main crossroad just to the west of Castle. Those roads, like the compounds along those roads, are really strong in this. So I expect we're going to see one team try and take control of all those areas, and then the other one just go for the death blob strategy and just try and take them one by one. But I'm kind of nervous that maybe one team spreads out too much, tries to take too much control of all those little compounds rather than picking like 3 or 4, and then you get in those gunfights where you're 20 versus 5 and stuff like that. You just can't win. So I want to see the Netherlands pick like 3 or 4 positions in the circle, take control, and lock the Ukrainians out.
Well, they have a chance to. There is a good chunk of players kind of caught in the middle. Extends does find Bob, though, so one player gone down next to the train tracks, not on the train tracks. Would have been more fun if they were actually full-on cowboy battling on the trains, but that wasn't the case.
And we've seen so far that I think Sanok was the first game where the team with the man advantage actually won it. So I'm pretty sure the Netherlands got the man advantage in map 1 and 2 and couldn't close it out. So I'm not sure on this kind of map. It was almost a really nice kill from Mitchell. But I'm not sure on this map how big that 1 or 2 man advantage is early. Sometimes people get too invested in getting those individual kills right at the start of the game. But I want to see rather that you're setting up for the late game. Because these players now, the 3 that are running over looking for the solo kill, they're not looting, they're not getting better DMRs, not getting more meds. They're not putting themselves in a better position for late game, all for that 1 kill, which really won't be that important.
Let's see. There's still the Ukrainian bunch, I guess you can say, up kind of in a pinned-in position, or at least on the map it seems so. I feel like they still have a way of getting out by just either sending it straight down south through Eki and them, or by wrapping further west if they want to. Then the question becomes now, do they have the vehicles and kind of the transportation opportunity to wrap like that or not?
Yeah, stacking about 10 players in Podvosto. Yes, it's a really nice place to loot. Is it Podvosto? No, it's what's it called? Grocka. Yeah, but it's a really nice place to loot. There's so many buildings there. But realistically, you're looking at maybe 2 or 3 car spawns. So if you do get unlucky and you only get 2, and suddenly a bunch of your players have to run in, then it's a little bit rough.
Trying to figure out how. Because right now, in Netherlands are sitting center, which I feel like it's the first time we've seen them do. But at the same time, they're split extremely thin. So the more people they try and send down to where Hancock and them are, if the Ukrainian players that are up towards the north actually do engage in a fight, because we've seen shooting from Ukraine where Perfectix is up towards where Lower and Bram and those are. If that fight does pop off and the Ukrainian players that are currently in Dobromesto come over to kind of help fortify that position, you'd think they have the numbers, right?
Yeah, it would at least be like a 50-50, a battle where you don't really know who's going to win. But I'm kind of nervous for the Netherlands that they might not necessarily be unaware, but not really be paying attention to the fact that you have that Ukrainian contingent coming out of Grocka. And there's an opportunity, especially if they're running, if they're running around in the forest and the people just happen to drive through them, there's an opportunity for the Dutch players to get ambushed and lose a couple of players early. And right here, like Perfectix, no one knows he's here, right? So if someone drives right next to him, yeah, he should be able to get a knock or two at least, you'd hope, but he's not able to get anyone down. Excellent's not able to do it either, so bit of a waste. There was an opportunity there, but they could have got someone. I don't know.
There was one car with 2 in it. There was one car with 4 in it. There was 6 Ukrainian players shooting, and they didn't get a single knock. How?
It was such a big opportunity to get a couple of free kills there. Like, there was no way the Netherlands could have prevented it if Perfectix could hit shots. If they'd both just shot the car, they would have enough bullets to blow it up. So I'm not sure exactly what went on there or exactly why it went on. But it's a bit of luck, I think, for the Netherlands. I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
And now means that they can set up really nicely. They have this villa. They have the area southeast of it as well. I mean, yes, it's quite easy to push into villa because it's very hard to hold the whole thing given its size. But they still have a lot of presence in the middle of the map right now.
That is so confusing. So, I mean, I'm sitting here. Oh my god, nice shot, actually. Making up for all the bullets we saw whiff before. Only needed one. That one bullet did more damage than the 7 teammates you had trying to shoot up vehicles.
So it was a bit sad when you get that really nice knock and then you just don't get the kill out of it. Yeah.
Okay, thinking about it because the compound circle though goes back up towards the north, and I think if you're Ukraine now, you have to determine: do we go and kind of sandwich them, or do we fortify either the southern or, which I would assume, the western position, and try and push them from there?
Faye's forgotten how to drive. It's a bit rough to see, but he's going to escape eventually.
Did he ever learn to begin with?
But I feel like the Dutch are going to set up around Villa. Are they going to use this as like the main base of operations and then have the little outposts around it? And I'm not necessarily sure I like that. You kind of get locked into, yes, it's quite a big place. And because it's quite high up, you've got a lot of control of the area around it. But if the cycle then shifts away and Ukraine has control of everything except the villa, where do you go?
I don't know. That's my answer to you.
I think the correct answer is you don't.
Yeah, exactly. You all of a sudden find yourself very limited.
And I mean, we're seeing this group go north, which I like. The fact that they're not hedging their bets on it, going straight towards the villa and taking control of it. But then there's that risk of, are they now spreading out too much? Are they now, if this group then gets crashed because it's only 5 players and there's no one really around to support it. Because there's a big ridge that's isolating now this group from the rest of the Dutch team. So it kind of feels like maybe they're not necessarily planning positions that can support each other. Like I think a good analogy is, you remember back in the day when Liquid would do like 2-1-1 splits.
They still do that, but yeah, but they
still do it. But they would do like really extreme splits.
Yeah,
and sometimes they put themselves in a position where they couldn't help each other, and then you just see like a Beats regimes would just get knocked and then they just bleed out. There's nothing they could do. It kind of feels like this is that strategy, but on a 32v32 scale, where the Netherlands are putting these isolated groups out. And I think it's risky. There is an opportunity where you get the shift, and because you have all that control of the compounds, that it works. But there's also the risk that if the Ukraine works out that there's 5 people in a compound and they just stick 10 players on it, there's not really much you can do to stop it.
True. The circles continue to go north, and a little, I guess, side input I can give. Now, I am counting on the Digital Athletics Twitter to be legitimate in what they tweet. As far as I know, Turkey has just beat Russia 3-0.
Ouch. I mean, Turkey didn't move the map last Nations Royale, and I don't think they've lost one so far.
At least one.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting that to be like a grand final, right? Expecting that to be the closest game we'd have. So the fact that that's a 3-0, and the fact that the winning team will have to meet them.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the team that wins this then has to fight. You have to be a bit nervous if you're coming against that Turkish roster.
Yeah, even if you're like whether you're Ukraine or Netherlands, it's got to be a pretty well, we want to win and we hope to win, but type scenario.
And the Netherlands are finally going for that death stack strat, but it looks like they're going to crash a compound that already has some Ukrainians in it if they're not careful. No, they spotted them. Okay, so they're okay. But they're starting to group up really extensively in these compounds now. I think they gave up on the villa idea because the circle came north. And now you're seeing these kind of blobs appear where you got 10 players in the same place.
Kind of that we're seeing from Ukraine right now. Somehow they're both sending it to the compound. To me, that was a little bit of a sheep herding trick as to try and kind of pin them in. They are the fire right now. That's supposedly should they try and see if they can just corner up the Dutch players. Now we do have 25 seconds to go from now until the next circle is gonna pop, and I feel like we're back to a position where the circles could potentially determine the winner of this match.
Well, it will certainly determine which team has to make that Hail Mary crash. And we've seen in the past where the Ukraine can do it successfully and the Netherlands really struggled. So I'm a little bit nervous for the Netherlands. If this circle now comes like northwest, if it goes towards Goroka, which I doubt it will, so it's going to center up. And you have to look at that and you think the Netherlands are in a better position. They have that center compound. They have the northern compound as well, which is quite nice. But I feel like the Ukraine now needs to go for a big crash, right? They need to look for a position where they can wipe out 5, maybe 10 Dutch players.
Yeah,
with no recourse.
They need to get something going. They need to find a foothold, which I guess they kind of already have in the northern compound. I just then don't feel like that's big enough to house 31 players.
Yeah, but now you have a bunch of Dutch players on this northern side. Do you then recognize that as Ukraine and just crash the middle compound? I kind of feel like it would be risky, but if they can crash enough players into that compound where they can overwhelm, there's an opportunity where they could just take that out of control, take the presence away from the Dutch players and have it in their own hands.
Yeah. Witska falls. Will we head all the way to the final map? We haven't really had any of that this season. Maybe we will get to see that here today.
Korea getting hot shots shot at him by his own compatriot. It's a bit rough, but it kind of feels like now this Ukrainian group on the north side has recognized they need to push a man advantage, right? They need to grab some kills, and so now they're flooding up this hill. It's a really small group from the last players. There's only like 5 or 6 players. So if you send 10 players up this hill, if you send enough that you can just overwhelm and push that, you can maybe have like a 3-4 man advantage come out of this, and then you take that big gunfight in the compound where you can just overwhelm.
Well, I have a chance of making an aggressive play here. I can't really see Ukraine doing it right now. I thought actually, to be fair, they'd be a little faster in trying to maybe execute an attack on either of the kind of Dutch fortifications, but they haven't opted to do it now. Extends is pushed forward.
These kind of players are in a really rough spot here. They need to just try and get a couple kills each as they go down, because they're like 3v10 on the south side. And the longer they can keep that group stuck on the south, stuck looking the wrong way, the more the other Ukrainian players can then have a bigger impact on the game. Because we now see that because they're getting these knocks, X6 and J3, they're getting these knocks, slowing them down, forcing 5 or 6 players to turn around and try and deal with this group. It's opening up opportunities for the rest of the Ukrainian players to get aggressive, try and take players out.
Stylers looking over the top. Gets himself a knock on to not Pokemolodoy, but Nikomolodoy. Still plenty more players to be found over on this side. Missed up. Takes an M24 bullet straight to the face, and this could potentially be where that final brawl will stand.
This Eastern Hill, I think, is going to not necessarily decide the game, but going to decide which team has the ascendancy coming into the later circles, because there is this big opportunity for a gunfight to happen. We've got probably half the server within like 200 meters of each other now on the northeastern side. If that engagement does happen, I think if the Netherlands don't win that, I think this might be a 3-1.
There is a chance.
That circle's good for the Netherlands, really. It's come not necessarily south, but sort of southeast, which means that the compound that the Ukrainians had in the northern side is now a really bad position. That team on the hill now needs to get aggressive. So if the Netherlands can hold on, they can create a big enough defensive line, maybe there's a way through for them. But I'm looking at this southern group for the Ukraine now. They need to have an impact. They need to find a way to break the armor of the Dutch team.
Well, speaking of breaking armor, one start is to get the opposing player down to 1 HP. Silas does fall. Aren't able to get the flush with the SLR. Eric does get down J-Fruit as well. So a little bit of a trade coming, and the kills are still in favor of the player numbers, I should say, are still in favor of Ukraine. And it seems like they're continuing to be so for a little while. But as I say that, as I say that, look at the fight happening right now. Ukraine has opted to crash one of the Dutch positions, and they need to hold off right now.
And the big problem for the Dutch is that there's so many players on the eastern side, so now they're just getting overwhelmed by the Ukrainians, who are actually knocking each other more than knocking the Dutch. But look at that man advantage now. It's going all the way in favour of the Ukrainians. There's so many players knocked in this compound, but there's just no way to flush them out, no way to get rid of them. So the Ukrainians now in a great position as they're knocking more of each other. Stemmer's just killed 2 of his teammates with the Molotov.
That's
not good. Yeah. Ouchies.
A bit of a blow to the Dutch Russia. As you can see, Ukraine are trying to get some rests in, but there's still more players to be dealt with upstairs. These Molotovs are going to spread around, but just exactly not wide enough, mister. Does fall. These guys are completely cornered by the Mollies. That one should connect there. Oh my lord, when you have 32 people.
No, there we go.
Yeah, it's gonna happen eventually. Burn, baby, burn. They're all gonna go down. That's 1, that's 2, and there goes the 3rd. Play with me, fools, as well. This entire top floor is burning.
They're clearing up. There's still a couple of players here. Mister on about 1 HP. He's gonna get 1 knock, but he can't flush them out. Once again, that overwhelming man advantage. As they keep shooting each other, but the overall man advantage from the Ukrainians has ruled the day, right? I mean, they're able to just flood in. Yes, they get knocked, but they're able to get the trades in, and there's just no way for the Netherlands to flush. And now we see a big man advantage in favor of the Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of that reason being, as you're just saying, they get the revives in. I think if no one had gotten any rests. Been so good at getting the players back on their feet, so that way they've been able to keep the number in their favor.
Yeah, and the fact that this group of about half of the Dutch team was on the eastern side, having no impact on that gunfight, whilst the Ukrainians committed 2/3, maybe even 3/4 of their roster to doing that. It just put the Netherlands at such a massive disadvantage, because we always speak about just man advantages in any gunfight is always strongest. You know, being able to trade 1 for 1 and winning out a game by doing that is always the best way to win the game. And the fact that the Dutch players have so many players not having an impact on the gunfights has put them in a really rough position. Yes, there's an opportunity if Laura can hit a shot to get the second knock. Or she ran out of bullets, but I don't think they're aware where she is, so maybe she can get a second kill here.
I'm pretty sneaky thrown down position. Oh, the timing.
Should get that kill. Yeah, the nade is good.
Off the body as well. That is fortunate. Great play coming in there from Laura. Not only getting the knocks, but the kills too, but every good adventure has to come to an end. She does get found, and now more people coming over the top. Is this working in favor of Ukraine? For sure they have them. They have the circle. They have the Netherlands caught on the edge of the circle, and oh my lord, I'm not seeing them coming back from this one.
Yeah, but Spyro does get taken down, but still that man advantage is so heavily in favor of Ukraine, and they're just getting knocks all over the place. That's just where, yes, Laura... F. It's literally a perfect nade. But that's just where, like, even Laura getting 2 kills there, even if someone else did the same, because it was such a big man advantage, doesn't matter. As soon as Spyro steps in and trades the kill, yes, they're losing like 1 player on their advantage, but that's not enough when you have 10 players up. And now 5v16, more like 2v16. I just don't see a way that the Ukraine could throw this, because they literally have a smoke to their name, and that's about it.
It's not going to happen. They have 1 player left alive, and there they fall. Dutch guy, appropriate name for the situation, was the final player to fall. Netherlands will fall to Ukraine 3-1. So not the shootout that we, I think, saw from Russia and Turkey. We have to double check and make sure that that's correct. But a win regardless for Ukraine, who will be taking on Turkey in these upper bracket finals, and that's gonna be that's gonna be tricky. I mean, looking at that upcoming match, Turkey and Ukraine play 2, I want to say, very different styles, but they're also both very good at committing when you need to.
Yeah, Ukraine just straight up look for that gunfight, right? They spend the entire game looking for a way to get that 20 versus 10 gunfight that they can use to win out the game.
Yeah.
Turkey, on the other hand, generally tend to spread out and wait for that gunfight to happen and then crash into it. So it's almost going to be like a proactive versus a reactive style. But it should make for a really fun game, as we have that one team looking for the fight and that one team setting up to defend from it.
It's gonna be fun to watch. It's gonna be fun to follow, but it's not going to be right now because we are going to be watching Norway play against the winner of the Germany versus Hungary fight, which is taking place in the lower bracket. We like to follow one match of each bracket during the broadcast, so we'll be hopping down there afterwards. I'm not sure exactly whether their game is done just yet, so the break coming up now might be a little longer, might be a little shorter. I'm not quite sure, to be fair, but it is going. Hungary versus Norway, I'm told. So Hungary beat Germany. Okay, that's interesting. That's I mean, Hungary Hungary to me has been kind of the Joker team going through. At least they were on day one. And then when they went against Greece yesterday, they just really quickly kind of figured out the flaws of Greece and took advantage of them. Will that work now, though? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, they said they learned from the Russians, right? That was the statement we got yesterday from the Hungarian captain. But we've just seen the Russians get absolutely smashed. So maybe this is the end of the road for Hungary. But as a team, I think I've been the most impressed by Hungary in terms of the sort of expectation coming in was that they would be one of the weaker countries. But they're doing it so well as a region. So I'm really impressed by what they've seen. I think we're going to be in for a treat next.
I hope so, for sure. Let's take a look at the bracket and see after this game how things are looking. Russia lost to Turkey. Ukraine beat Netherlands. They will be in the upper finals. This has all come to an end. And of course, both Russia and Netherlands aren't out of it just yet. They will be, as far as I know, at least hopping down to the lower bracket, as you can see there, where they will be waiting for the victors of their respective games. Finland beat Denmark. I guess that's no big surprise when it all comes down to it. They will be going up against the winner of Kazakhstan and Estonia, and then the winner of that match will go up against Russia. Now, I talked to Mikas, the captain of Finland, after they'd gone up against Russia. I was like, come on, man, why you go 0-3? And he just told me, Toby, they're a better team. I mean, no matter what we would have done different, there's no way we ever beat them. So who knows? Who knows? They have a little more time to figure out maybe a change of strategy, but they have to beat the winner of Estonia and Kazakhstan to get there first. Guys, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, it's going to be Hungary versus Norway. Coming your way here real soon.